Hello and welcome to Dawn English. This is Adil Shahzeb. You must have heard the news that Al Qaeda leader Iman Zaharis has been killed in a CIA drone strike in Afghan capital Kabul. This is a big major news and perhaps the biggest blow since Osama bin Laden's killing in 2011. The Egyptian surgeon Iman Zaharis, he had 25 million reward on his head, and he allegedly helped coordinate the September 11, generally known as 9/11 attacks in the US. But where do we go from here? Because 1 year ago, the Taliban took over in Kabul. They have a government there now, although not, legitimized government in Kabul. They condemned the attack, and they believe that the Doha agreement that they signed with the United States, this new, perhaps the first attack since the Taliban took over. It's a blatant violation of Doha agreement. Although the United, they have declared President Biden, the U.S. president, has categorically said that Iman Zaharis' presence in Kabul simply shows that the Taliban has violated Doha agreement. I'm joined by Professor Dr. Adil Najam. He's always been very kind, this time from Boston University. Dr. Najam, how do you see this current development, especially 1 year into the Taliban regime? What does that mean? That means that the United States is a very close eye on the regional developments, and especially on Afghanistan. And also, there have been some questions raised that where they, the where, operate the drone strike from, whether Pakistan, outside Pakistan. Different questions have been raised. But the fundamental question is, obviously, you're into that. How significant is this for our?
Thank you, Adil. Thank you very much. It is significant. It is significant, but its significance is multifaceted. There are at least three ways to look at this. The first is what is the relevance of Ayman al-Zawahiri being hit. Now, the fact of the matter is, this was not the Ayman al-Zawahiri. His importance today was not what it was in 2001 or even before that. So he's not the same Ayman al-Zawahiri. Second is, Al-Qaeda is not the same Al-Qaeda that was. But the third and most important is that for the US, it is still important to get him because he was, after Osama bin Laden, probably the second best known name in the whole 9/11 imagination and what came with 9/11. In fact, I would say that his importance was even more before 9/11 because he was the one person who brought the intellectual base and the operational base of what became Al-Qaeda together. Right? So he was influential in creating multiple generations of these extremists by bringing together the ideology and the operation. So that's why it's important, but it's not the same importance as it would have been 20 years ago. The importance for the US is that for Mr. Biden, it is checking off an important tick mark. It is saying that we have not given up, we have not forgotten, especially right before a US election. It is important for him to say, just because we are out of Afghanistan doesn't mean that we've given up on the war on terror, if you will. We will still find ways to finish that unfinished business, and that is the way he has spoken about it. The most important thing is what you alluded to. What does it mean for the region? What does it mean, more importantly in the region, what does it mean for US-Taliban relations? On the one hand, you are exactly right that both the Taliban and the US have actually said the same thing. They've said that the other side is violating the Doha Agreement. Right? The US is saying Taliban, by having Zawahiri in Kabul or allowing it, whether on purpose or otherwise, violated it because one of the agreements in there was that they would not support Al-Qaeda and its operators. The Taliban, on the other hand, are saying, well, a strike into our territory. And again, going back to this drone is a violation. However, this is important. I think neither of them have protested as loudly as you would have expected. In
Hmm.
some ways, both have made the point, but it seems they've made the point to make the point.
Hmm.
And what we do not know yet is just how much, not coordination, but were the Taliban totally taken unawares? Did they just look the other way? And what does this mean in some ways for the future of US Taliban relations? And because it could mean in some ways, because Taliban need recognition, they don't have recognition. The US again finds that they need to find ways to work with the Taliban because they are in control on the ground. So that is the big question. How will this impact the future relations? I'm not sure that I want to totally believe the condemnation because on both sides it is kind of lukewarm.
Dr. Najam, thank you. Very meaningful points you have raised, especially with regards to the international recognition and acceptance, and particularly frozen assets of the Taliban. If there is, the, we don't know yet, but if there is even a tiny and small coordination between the U.S. authorities and the Taliban in carrying out this attack, what could that mean for Taliban's efforts of gaining international recognition?
I think so. First of all, as you know much better, you know this region very well. It is not like there has been no contact between the Taliban and the US. In
Hmm.
fact, both have been very good at maintaining communication,
Hmm.
maintaining contact, if not official recognition. In many ways, it is to the interest of both of them to come to some arrangement because this limbo of there is a government in Afghanistan, there is a party in control in Afghanistan, but it is totally outside of the international system, is neither good for the Taliban, but nor is it good for the US or the international system because they also find it more difficult. Who do we talk to? Right? If we want to do something, who do we talk to? So there is a logic on both sides for finding some way. I would say there is something else that's happened this week that might be as important in that. One is this incident. The other is the Taliban seem to be saying we are willing to open up on girls' education,
Hmm.
at least to some degree. In many ways, I think recognition will depend far more on that sort of a gesture. And I've been surprised that the Taliban have stayed away from that gesture. I hope it's not simply a gesture, but a real opening, because this is about talking about half the population of the country. But that is the type of thing that would allow the US and the West in general the opening in the door to be able to create something. But as you said, even if some opening is created, it is very important for Taliban because it will open for them not only a conduit to the West, but also to the rest of the world because other countries, including Pakistan, find themselves in this awkward state. Do you actually talk to the people who are actually in control on the ground? Or do you act as if they are not there?
Right. So, Professor Najam, how big of a blow, if this is to the Al Qaeda operationally? Because ideologically, yes, he was, the biggest and prominent, most prominent leader after Osama bin Laden. But operationally speaking, he was keeping very low. We would have seen one odd videos of Iman Zaharis, but no, major attacks claimed by Al Qaeda in the past few years.
I think you are right. It's not that big a blow. So operationally to the Al Qaeda, it's not as big a blow, but it is important. What it signifies is not that al-Zawahiri was taken. What it signifies is that the US hasn't given up on chasing Al Qaeda. Right? The importance of this is not the
Yes.
person for Al Qaeda. It is that the rest of Al Qaeda says, okay, they are still continuing with that mission. Just because they left Afghanistan doesn't mean that that mission has totally concluded. I think the bottom line is this is far more important for Mr. Biden in US domestic politics than it is important operationally for Al Qaeda. But because it gives him a way in what is going to be a difficult election, it gives him another important point. It gives him this idea that the fire of 9/11 is still alive. We are not going to forget the families of 9/11. We are not going to forget what happened. And that domestic benefit to Mr. Biden is probably greater than the domestic implementation blow to Al-Qaeda as an organization, which not only was he not more as important as before, which, as I said, is no longer the same organization as it was. By that doesn't mean that it's changed its ideology. What it means is that operationally it is more fragmented. Operationally, it is the line of command within the organization seems to be much less intense and controlled than it was when Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri were at their peak.
When Osama bin Laden was killed, his number two back then, Iman Zaharis, of course, it was widely believed by the Western media that he's also hiding somewhere in Pakistan. But now that he's been killed in Kabul, does that prove anything? And does that matter anymore?
Well, that's a very good question. It matters that as you sitting in Pakistan as a Pakistani, it matters that this operation did not happen in Pakistan. Right? Because the cost of the fact that Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan has been tremendous and continues to be tremendous, both to practical and narrative reasons, both for practical and narrative reasons in US-Pakistan relations. So that itself is good. I think it matters to the Taliban much more about whether the US will believe that the Taliban were actually supporting his being there, or whether it means, as it might have been for Osama bin Laden, that they were unaware and they are not in as much control of Kabul and all of its details as one would imagine. I think that's the big question for the US. I think what it also matters is that what is the retirement plan of extremists, right? So in some ways, as we have discussed, Ayman al-Zawahiri was no longer, from all reports, an operational figure. He had never been as charismatic, for example, as a charismatic leader. Osama bin Laden, his importance had come because he had influence on Osama bin Laden and others, as both an ideologue and as an operational implementer. So his importance had gone down, and I think it plays also to what is happening with Al-Qaeda itself. I think the big question in this remains, for the US certainly, and also for the Taliban, what is the new landscape? What is the emerging landscape of these militant organizations, of Al-Qaeda, as it morphs into something new? It's not simply a question of who will be the new leader, but what's the structure? Is it breaking up? Where is what we used to call ISIS? Where might other splinter groups come? So always the question with any such operation, after such operation, is when you have someone, what will be the impact of this within Al-Qaeda and within the larger landscape of these militant organizations?
Professor Dr. Adil Najam, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.